Reddit.
Serious Redditors who have cut family members off from their lives. What was the final straw for you? I had been in the hospital for over a month, nearly dying from a rare disorder. My dad had came and spent time with me almost every day. Whereas my mom, not even a phone call. When I finally got out and was at home, I called her to update her on what had been going on with me. And she dominated the conversation. She somehow made the entire situation about her, and how worried she was. What she would have done if that happened to her, etc. My 2-year-old ran up to me and was hugging my leg. And as I looked down into the eye of my baby, I realized I couldn't even imagine if my baby had just gone through what I did. Not visiting, not calling, and making every conversation about me. That was pretty much the last time I ever talked to my mom. My sister had already cut mom from her life. And that moment was when it dawned on me, mom really doesn't care about us. She doesn't actually love us. A loving mother would never have treated their children the way that woman treated us. Loaning them 40,000 which I had to borrow to prevent foreclosure of the family. They begged me for months, only to have them pretend it was a gift and making me hire an attorney to get the money back. To make it worse, they even accused me of forging documents, etc., to show it was a loan, trying to ruin my name in the process. Fortunately, they had paid for 4 years, and that was what saved me. I cut my uncle out of my life the day my gran died. She had terminal lung cancer, and the last 3 months of her life, she lived out in complete agony. My mother and I moved in with her to care for her full time. I was only 18, working, and still in full-time education. It took so much out of me. My uncle didn't offer us a hand once. And when we asked him for help, he was essentially like, "You no. She smells like piss." In the days leading up to her death, when she was pretty much a vegetable, he finally came round to discuss how her money was going to be handled, demanding he was entitled to more than us because he was the eldest. Despite the fact that he was incredibly well off, didn't do anything to help my gran while she was dying, and the fact my mother and I were essentially living in poverty at the time. All he cared about was her money. It's been 2 years since she died, and all of that stuff is still being sorted out. But I refuse to talk to him now. I hate him. He's such a heartless pig that couldn't even be upset about his mother dying because he was so excited at the prospect of receiving money. Years and years of being told I never do anything right by my mother. Some of the highlights: scored 99% on a test and got told I was stupid for forgetting it on a currency equation. Made county finals for wrestling. Got dropped off and asked how long before she had to be back because I'd rather go shopping than stay. Qualified as team alternate for the national championships and had to turn it down because your father and I have plans and I'm not canceling. My sister was stealing packs of cigarettes for her friends and I took the blame and beating despite none of my friends being smokers or drinkers since we were all doing high-level sports. My son was born and she got mad that my wife breastfed because it meant she couldn't bottle feed him. I took the abuse on that one too because I didn't intervene and stop it. That last one did it for me. He's 8 now. Has no idea she exists. It's been almost 7 years. She's an addict. No amount of love and support from us is going to change that. She has to change by herself, and right now, she doesn't seem to be able to do that. She's lied to us, stolen from us, lied to us some more, and now there is no trust left. She's the only person that I have banned from my home. The final straw was her coming to the house with a friend. Both of them obviously under the influence, and she kept going to the bathroom looking for medication that we were hiding from the last time she stole pain medication. I cut off everyone except one sibling when I turned 18. I already knew I wanted to do this by the time I was 16. Mom is a very mentally ill drug addict and father was a sociopathic pervert. Cut off the rest because I knew they would leak details of my life to said parents. Don't know if any died. Don't care. My life has been very peaceful ever since. You know when people say they wish they could be a kid again? I would never want that. The power and autonomy I have over myself as an adult is invaluable. When my father took a phone call from me, and I asked him to please be alone for it, I poured out my heart and soul for 9 minutes. Tears. Sobs. Tragedy. Everything. I hung up and he texted me a few minutes later saying he had put me on speakerphone and the whole family had heard everything. I responded that it was the last thing they would ever hear of me. The final straw was a fist fight with stepmom and stepbrothers all at once. Stepmom said I wasn't welcome to the house anymore. Dad favored his new family over me. He said he'd make an agreement with my mom to skip weekend visits for no child support. I was 16 and I haven't seen, heard from or spoken to him in 29 years. Still don't care to know if he's alive or dead. Technically my mom did the cutting off part. But when I was little my dad kidnapped me and my sibling abroad just to get back at my mom. The mastermind behind it all was his cunt of a mother. I know people throw this word around but she was a true psychopath. Me and my siblings spent about a year in a house with that bitch being constantly psychologically and physically abused by her. As my dad drank himself into a coma. My mom eventually got us back and we never spoke to them since. Sometimes I wonder if she's dead and think about defacing her grave and pissing on it. Some of my cousins because they lied to my mother regarding a musical instrument of mine that they decided to steal. The truth of the matter is if they asked, I would have sold it to them pretty cheap. But the lying and taking it without my permission is the kicker. The sad thing is that I'm one of the few family members that was on their side or at least would hear them out. As they are considered black sheep of the family by other family members and looked down upon. They essentially burned their last bridge within our family. I've still yet to receive an apology 5 years later. Sister caused issues out of thin air and then when challenged about it she lied through her teeth and tried to get family on side. She had then done this on 2 occasions with a girlfriend I recently split up with because of these reasons. She failed miserably as she was found out but it still cost me a good relationship. It's one thing causing drama. But to cause me drama and interfere in my relationship just hammers the nail in the coffin for me. It makes it worse that she openly admitted to me that part of the reason she caused an issue is because I wasn't speaking to her. So my thoughts were that it was the dumbest thing you can do to build a relationship with someone. It's the exact opposite of building bridges. My dad was a pretty big asshole all his life to just about everyone around him. He's entitled and rude and likes to believe that as long as it's the truth, he is allowed to say anything and no one is allowed to get angry. It was his birthday and I had traveled about an hour and a half on 2 different modes of transit to come help celebrate, and when I walked into the restaurant where he was already sitting, I said, "Happy birthday, Dad." And he said, "You've gotten so fat." It wasn't even an attempt at a joke. He just thought it was okay to say whatever he thought was true. This was the final straw in a giant hay barrel of terribly demeaning behavior from him, and 4 years later, I have no doubt that I did the right thing. It turns out that all I had ever really been doing was fulfilling the social contract of being a good son to a person who could barely bring himself to be civil to me. I figured 20 years of that was more than he deserved and blocked him on every platform and haven't seen him since. Cut my father out 2 years ago because the abuse from alcohol is too much. We had other problems like borderline personality disorder, drugs, etc. He's always been a toxic person in my life. But I needed to set boundaries. I have a fiancé now. I also have a 9-month-old. He's met neither of them. People tell me I'll regret breaking ties with him. I've never felt freer. And totally okay that my son will never know his grandfather. Best decision I've ever made and couldn't be happier. My mother threatened her neighbor with a gun and had a pretty severe mental break. I decided to try and have her held at a hospital for evaluation. We didn't have a good relationship prior and I didn't want to take her in on my own and to get her away from the situation. She flipped. Didn't go anywhere. She then called me and said I ruined her life and that she didn't have a son anymore. Haven't spoken to her in 2 years now.
Space Reddit.